Welcome to Tough Table Lite, episode number 2. My guest today is Dr. Anthony J., who's also the author of the great and also terrifying book, Estrogeneration. So we got two good topics today to go through. But before we jump into those, I want Anthony to do a brief Cliff Notes intro to the audience. Tell us, what you do, what you focus on, how you've stumbled upon that, how long you've been doing it for, that type of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for the past 3 years, I've been working as a scientist at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota, mostly doing epigenetic research. And before that, I got my Ph.D. in biochemistry from the Boston University Medical School. And that's when I wrote my book, Estrogeneration, which you mentioned. Uh, you know, I right after I got my PhD, I'd kind of done sex hormone research, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and and then, of course, I stumbled into all these fake estrogens,
Yeah.
PA, phthalates, parabens. I mean, on and on and on. There's a lot of them. And yeah, like some of them, like Agent Orange, for example, like, yeah, they mess with your sex hormones, but hopefully you're not exposed to Agent Orange.
Yeah.
Um, but then there's a lot of them that people are exposed to every day. So it started to kind of snowball just my recognition of these chemicals and my research into these chemicals, and it turned into that book.
Okay. All right. It was, like I said, I got the book, and I read that. I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years. I don't know. I lose track of time. And I was going through this thing, and I had already at that point started to scratch the surface, and I was like, something's off. Something is definitely off, with a lot of things that are going on. And then when I read that book, I'm like, oh, it is this off. Like there is that much stuff out there. So that's why I say it's a great book. I think everyone should read that. It is a little terrifying at times to just realize, like, wow, how much is out there. But it's definitely a great book, and I recommend that. And at the end of this, I'll put post links to that and stuff like that. So want to roll right into this now?
Oh, yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, yeah,
Topic one. Okay, we're dealing with endocrine disrupting chemicals and their effect on our health, in terms of fertility, overall health, health hormones. You're the doctor, so you could kick this off.
yeah, exactly. So, in terms of fertility, it makes a lot of sense that if you start messing with your sex hormones via fake estrogens and fake estrogen chemicals, again, like BPA, phthalates, parabens, like all these artificial estrogens, uh, it's just totally a no-brainer that it, of course, could lead to infertility. Sure enough, when you do research, it does indeed do that. Um, you know, like in animal studies, for example, if you dose them up with these chemicals, yeah, you see decreases in fertility. What's even more shocking and honestly more scary is that not only does it increase your fertility and your sperm counts and all this kind of thing, but it also decreases fertility in future generations. And that's something
Which is
that's
what
more
we're dealing with
sneaky.
now. Yeah, we're dealing with that now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You see those graphs, and they're just, sperm count, fertility rates are plummeting. And it's like you watch that, and then the scientists say, oh, we don't know what's causing this.
Yeah, it's like the breast cancer, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, let's raise awareness for breast cancer as if nobody's ever heard of it.
Yeah.
But nobody's talking about what's causing the breast cancer. As soon as you bring these chemicals into these third world countries, you suddenly see a huge spike in breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea, like passing out pink ribbons and dressing up football players like newborn baby girls, and it doesn't actually cause, it doesn't cure breast cancer. It's not actually solving any problems. Yeah, it's making some of these nonprofits really rich,
Yep.
and they're able to pay huge CEOs to their salaries to their CEOs. But in terms of actually solving the
Yeah. The
problem,
work is not getting
got to
done.
look at the chemicals.
Yeah. And when you talk about I found something that tripped my interest a while back. I think it was from, I got it here. It's from 2010. I bumped into this, and it talked about the frogs.
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
the frogs with the was it the weed killer or something like that?
Yep.
It says here
Atrazine.
atrazine. Yep, atrazine, widely used to kill pests on U.S. croplands, is an endocrine disruptor. a substance that interferes with animals' reproductive systems. Previous research has shown that atrazine can give male amphibians female characteristics. Look around now. For instance, male frogs exposed to atrazine have lower testosterone levels, produce less sperm, and even change their mating habits for choosing males over females. And the last line, now research has discovered that the chemical transforms male frogs into fully functioning females and that the substance may be contributing to a worldwide decline in amphibians. When I saw that in 2010, I was like, wait, what? Like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then you start reading about other things, other things they're finding in the waters, and it's influencing frogs. And uh, that's what really started to trip my interest to like, hey, something is definitely going on here.
Right, exactly. They call it male feminization. Even in peer-reviewed scientific journals, male feminization. And now, of course, more recently, they're trying to get away from that term because of politics.
Of
So
course.
basically, they're changing the storyline, even though the facts are the facts. They're basically sweeping a lot of this under the rug purely because of politics, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
And atrazine, by the way, atrazine totally illegal in Europe. It's not even allowed over there. In
Now,
America,
is it still allowed here?
oh yeah, big time.
Oh,
Well, I was gonna say it's the second most used herbicide in North America, so it's
wow.
everywhere.
Wow. And at that point in time, I thought like, oh, okay, like weed killer. All right, like stay away from that. But then you start to come to realize that this stuff is really, really everywhere. Not the atrazine per se, but other EDCs are they're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. People are rubbing them on their skin 3 times a day. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're in your lotions. Oftentimes, they're in your deodorants. They're in your shampoo. People think, well, I'm washing it off in my shampoo. Not really. Does your fragrance, do you smell your hair after you get out of the shampoo? If you've got that fragrance, oftentimes that's full of artificial estrogens. It carries through. It stays on your skin. It stays in your hair, uh,
And
and
and you
on and
feel that
on.
plastics a big concern here as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they've done studies, for example, on crib mattresses for babies, and they talk about the off-gassing of the plastic mattresses and how it literally, increases these estrogen chemicals in the air that they're breathing to above cancer limits. Like it exceeds the cancer limits in their bloodstreams when they test for it. So if you're getting to that degree of problem, that level, that's a huge problem, obviously. Uh, but even just drinking water out of plastics, liquids in plastics, a terrible idea, especially in the long term. Once in a while, it's okay, but if you're doing it all the time, you got to stop if you want your
Well,
hormones to be
that's
optimal.
that's what became a concern for me. I'm the coach of the natural bodybuilding team, but I used to compete. And at that time when I'm bumping into stuff like this, and then I get paranoid. I've always kind of been paranoid about the water supply. Always have been. Even before the competing, I always knew something was, I don't know. I just never trusted it. But then you get to the point where you're competing and you're drinking. At my weight as a male, I was drinking 2 gallons of water a day. So now I'm drinking 2 gallons of water a day. I buy the plastic gallon from the store. Okay, the Poland Spring. I down that gallon, and what am I doing now? I'm refilling the same gallon with the shitty water coming out of the faucet. Okay, and then I'm going to the gym. It's hot out, and the sun is baking that water bottle. Okay, and now I'm drinking and drinking. Problem, right? Am I being paranoid, or is that a problem?
Yeah, it's for sure a problem. Every time they do research studies, even at room temperature, that water's full of phthalates. It only gets worse with heat.
Heat.
And
Yep.
it actually is worse too if it's oily. So if you're storing oils in plastic, it's even worse. So a lot of these animal studies that say like olive oil's bad, and then you see another study that says olive oil's good, and then another study olive oil's bad, and olive oil good. Well, it keeps making headlines. It keeps confusing everybody. Well, what are they studying? Olive oil in plastic. They're storing it in plastic. Oftentimes, they're actually studying the chemicals that are leaching from the plastic and then causing rats to get fat, rats to get their hormones all screwed up. It happens to the animals just like it happens to humans. Just like the male feminization, they've gone beyond frogs and studied mice and all kinds of other species with atrazine and feminization, and it causes the same problem in mammals. So it's not just an amphibian problem,
Yeah.
but
So you feel that definitely you could say that plastic production being on the rise, plastic consumption being on the rise, that definitely you feel has an impact on fertility rates, declining sperm count stuff. Maybe it's not the only thing because there's a lot of other stuff out there, but plastics are definitely an issue.
Oh yeah, they're definitely contributing. And it's funny too because a lot of people they'll say, well, it's okay because humans are overpopulated. You know, that's what I hear all the time.
Oh yeah, is that one? Yeah.
It's so funny because it's like, well, number one, if you're just passively exposing yourself and you have no idea that you're becoming infertile, that seems kind of problematic. You at least
Yep.
want to know if you're becoming infertile and have power over it. You know, knowledge is power in this case. But also, number two, the animals are also becoming infertile. Like around our globe, we found parabens in polar bears. They did a study with 11 polar bears all the way up in northern Alaska. Every single one of them had parabens in their fat cells. And that's an indicator this stuff is so leached into our food supply, into our oceans. Our oceans are circulating this around the globe. It's working up the food chain. Yeah, so it's even causing infertility in the polar bears. And then what do they blame it on? Global warming or
Warming.
something else.
Oh yeah, of course.
And yeah, and then nobody wants to point to these big corporations that are, basically spewing out all these plastics or not cleaning up these messes in the ocean and sending our waste over to China where they're just dumping it into the
Yeah,
ocean.
they don't. Yeah, they don't. They don't care.
Yeah, right.
They don't care about any of that.
Or burning it, right? Even if they're burning it, it's going up into the clouds and then it's just raining
Raining
back.
down. Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a problem all around the globe, even if you just pretend like we want infertility for some crazy reason, which we don't. But some people try and make that argument. I think that's also problematic.
Yeah. Now, besides the like the fertility related stuff, you feel that there's any significant, again, not with everybody, so everyone's different, but do you feel there's any significant like neurological effects from increased exposure to environmental estrogens and CDCs?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's two things.
EDC, sorry, CDC.
Endocrine
Oh,
disrupting.
yeah,
Yeah,
CDC.
throw the CDC in there.
Yeah,
What the hell?
they're on the
Let's get
mind right now.
censored. Why not?
Yeah, they're on the mind right now. Okay, EDC, sorry.
Yeah, um, pretty close. Pretty close. So the neurological effects are clear. I mean, for children with higher BPA levels in their urine, for example, you see higher levels of depression. I mean, the depression skyrockets. Birth control users, higher levels of suicide. That's one way to measure depression because people aren't very honest about depression. They lie about it generally because they don't want it on their medical record and things. But if you just look at the suicide numbers, they did a study with like tens of thousands of people, a huge study with birth control users, and found a big increase in suicides. And other metrics too. Like it seems like no matter how you measure depression, if you study it with these endocrine disrupting chemicals, with these fake estrogens, you find higher depression. The other thing, in male animals, if you give them higher doses of these estrogen chemicals, you see sexual apathy, meaning like they don't have any sex drive, which shouldn't surprise us because it shuts off your testosterone.
Yep.
So it does three things to testosterone. These fake estrogens, they decrease your total testosterone.
And hold on, before you go on, I want people to know that when we talk of testosterone, okay, just for the the audience, I want people to know that when we talk of testosterone is not just a good thing for men. It's not a men thing. Like females need a little bit of testosterone as well. So this does also apply to the women. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, the normal range for women is like 5 to 70 on their on like if you go to Quest Diagnostics or
LabCorp.
Yeah. But sometimes some of those blood testing companies, they'll say the normal range for women's testosterone is 0 to 70.
Oh,
which is absurd. It's literally laughable.
Yeah,
like in other words, if you go in and you get a 0, they'll tell you, the doctor will look at your blood and say, oh, everything looks good, everything's fine. You have 0 sex drive, you have 0 motivation, you have 0 energy, and they're telling you that everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
It's crazy.
And a lot of people don't even get. I have this problem with my clients until I get them to order their own blood work and pay out of pocket, not go through the insurance and the sick care system. Oh, I got blood work, everything seems fine. Where are the numbers? Where's the receipt?
Yeah.
I just called up
and they said I'm fine.
Oh, okay. I can guarantee that one, they probably tested nothing. Okay. And on top of that, if you're deficient or low in something, we want to be optimized, not like on the lower end of some range that is based on a huge population of mostly sick people.
Yep.
You know, being in a range is not optimal. Yeah, so yeah, that stuff gets rough. Yeah, real rough. But with the testosterone, what were you saying now?
Yeah, you want to be on the high end of normal. So women, men, both. You know, like for men, the normal range is 300 to 1,000 or
Which
1,500. So
that kept coming down, right? Over the years, like that range has shifted downward.
exactly, because so many people are low, and so they consider that normal. And yeah, maybe it is normal, but that doesn't mean it's good. If you're below 500, that's pathetic. Like you've got to get it above 500 at least. I mean, even that's pretty low in my mind. But shoot, you don't want to be below 500 on your total testosterone.
But this brings us to one of my other questions now. So I just want to make sure I'm correct here. You know, these endocrine disrupting chemicals, they compete at the receptor site, correct?
Oh yeah,
So
exactly.
now, is it possible for someone to be a 500 total testosterone today and that be much different than a 500 total testosterone 2, 3 decades ago?
Oh yeah, 100%. In fact, they did a study with a sunscreen chemical
Mm-hmm.
called 4-methylbenzylene camphor, but you know, no need to learn how to read labels. If you just see
Yeah.
a bunch of fake
Yeah.
chemicals on your
And I
sunscreen,
see something that I can't pronounce and it's like this long. No,
exactly, get rid of
no.
it. Get the zinc sunscreen if you're going
Yep.
to use.
That's what we got. That's what we
Yeah.
got.
But one of these sunscreen chemicals that acts like estrogen, of course, they did a study and they showed that it blocks binding of testosterone to the receptor. So
Great.
basically, even if you have, it's the analogy I always use is hockey players, like because I play hockey. If you go on the ice and the whole idea is to score goals into the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's say you put a piece of plywood in front of the goal, you block the receptors, you block the goal. It doesn't matter how many players you have on the ice. You could have a team of 20 players, really high levels of testosterone. It doesn't matter. You're shooting shots on net, they're not scoring because you got testosterone blocking. The receptors being completely shut off.
So
So you can,
these EDCs will compete for that same receptor.
well, yeah, they block it, they shut it off. So we call it testosterone. You know, like you're basically desensitizing your testosterone. You know how like there's insulin resistance.
Yes.
You can have testosterone resistance. Same thing. Harder to measure than insulin resistance, especially because the doctors, it's not even on their
Yeah,
radar.
they don't care.
Yeah, they're not that interested in it. Everybody's coming in at 250, so they think that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a
And then
real,
they'll prescribe Clomid.
exactly, aromatase inhibitors, which have
Yeah.
tons of side effects, huge problems. Yeah.
Tons. Now, so you got the EDCs that are messing with the site. And now if you tackle the female part of the birth control, those high emitting pill-based birth controls, when I see some of the blood work, and I always know who's on pill-based birth control because when I see the blood work, that SHBG reading is through the damn roof. Okay, through the roof. So correct me if I'm wrong. SHBG also binds to, because the key is the free testosterone, right? The key is the free testosterone. So SHBG binds to total, and what you kind of left off, and there's something else. What's the other one that binds to it?
Well,
Albunil. Yeah,
albumin
yeah,
binds.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you got these things binding to total testosterone, then it's left with the free. So if you got EDCs competing for the receptor site, then you have a high SHBG level because you're pumping yourself full of these all this other stuff. Where does that leave you feeling if you're not only your total T is low, and then what's left is being blocked and bound to what does that feel like? I mean, I don't want to
Exactly.
know.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. Nobody wants to know, but a lot of people are experiencing it. I mean, and like the analogy I use for SHBG is a limo service, right? It's like that's your sex hormone limo because testosterone actually floats on water. Remember, and I know you know this, but testosterone is made from cholesterol.
Yep.
Just think of butter. Like butter floats on water. So does testosterone. Your blood is like water. So you can't get that testosterone in your bloodstream without transporting it around on this limo service. You need something to get it around, or else it's just going to float. It's not going to be able to transport. So you put SHBG. It's the limo service. It trucks these things around your blood. And if that level is super high, if you get too much limo,
Mm-hmm.
all your testosterone's sitting inside that limo. It's not
And
getting out, doing your
not doing it.
body any
That's a,
favor.
that's a great analogy. Like I'm gonna make sure I use that one because it's difficult to try to explain that sometimes. But when I see those numbers where they are really, really high, not on the high end of normal, like they are out of the ballpark, they're out of the range. And again, I think that that has to do with, you know, where they are in terms of the pill, but still, like, these swings are very, very, very high. You know, if you start mixing that stuff in, you get someone with high cortisol, and now you have like this recipe for you know, disaster going on that most of the times I have to try to fix.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a common problem. I just got off the phone today with somebody. I was doing a DNA consult this morning, somebody from Texas. I did one from somebody from New York, actually, your part of the country. And the one from Texas, she had been on birth control for 20 years and now
Pill,
she's off, but it totally
pill,
screwed up her health.
pill. You saying pill?
A pill, exactly. Oh yeah. 17 alpha phenylestradiol, the most common one.
My wife got big into this with the, you know, the birth control. She is on a non, well, she's not anymore, but she was on a non-hormone IUD, and she was doing all this research, you know, pregnancy stuff like that, looking through all this stuff, and she started to find some weird things about pill-based birth control, about how, you know, by you pumping in all these estrogens, you know, you, like the frogs, you can start to influence how they act, what they look for, and moods, everything, and it's all based on that issue.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize too that one of the side effects of birth control is weight gain. You get fatter. Um,
Water.
Doctors aren't very honest about that, right? Like they never tell you that side effect. When you do tell people that, and I know some doctors that do tell women that, because they suddenly start gaining weight when they get on the birth control pill, and they say, "Oh yeah, that's one of the side effects," and the women are shocked because, of course, nobody told them that initially. Um, but that's because basically you're imitating pregnancy. You're telling your body that you're pregnant when you're not, and when you do that, one of the natural things that happens with pregnancy is you store more fat. That's because our ancestors didn't always have access to food. So when you're pregnant, you needed bigger energy reserves. You need
Mm-hmm.
more fat storage. So that's a natural thing, but not something you want to be imitating when you're trying to stay cut and trying to stay strong. I
Yeah.
don't think.
Okay. Yeah, definitely, definitely agree with that. So, overall rundown here is these EDCs have a big impact on fertility, you know, overall health, neurologic, mental, right?
Oh yeah.
And your healthy hormone levels. You know, but like you said, with the limo service, the hockey analogy, uh, those are great ways to, you know, to look at this, where it's like, even even if you go and get your blood work done and you are in a good range, there still is a possibility that you may not feel as optimal or as well as somebody who did 10, 20, 30 years ago with the same numbers, because just because your total is somewhere, the goal may be being blocked, and some of these useful hormones are being blocked by garbage hormones.
Yep. Exactly.
Now, is this may roll more into topic two, but I want to get it before I forget. If you have these EDCs in your system and they're bound to the receptor, is there a way to cleanse that out? Is there or are you fucked? Like,
Oh yeah. No, you for sure can. I mean, the reversal just takes a while and slow. I mean, for example, saunas are phenomenal ways to
so
accelerate.
it's more about like just not being exposed, and like,
The most important
I
thing.
don't want to say the D word, detox, and then it's just like people go off the deep end with that stuff. But is there a way to deal with those receptors and to clear them out? But, you know, saunas, obviously, I'm guessing drinking water, avoid
Oh yeah.
exposure, stuff like that. But does this take time? Is there hope for people who have maybe been overexposed for a long time and are looking to make, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you do need to get on like, testosterone replacement therapy with natural actual testosterone or estrogen replacement for women, progesterone, things like that. Um, I'm not afraid of that in certain situations, obviously. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, exercise helps because you're turning over more enzymes, you're turning over more of those receptors, you're getting rid of them, you're making new ones. You're just, metabolism just goes up in general. And so does eating healthy, of course, just having a
Yep.
better, higher metabolism, eating more fats and less crappy carbs and things like that, bumps your metabolism up. And like I say, the sauna is really interesting because scientists used to laugh at people if they said that you detox when you use the sauna. uh, but they do these studies called BUS studies, blood, urine, sweat, BUS, and they check people's urine, and they're not peeing any estrogens out hardly. I mean, it's barely in there. And those same people, if they go in the sauna and they measure their sweat, they're full of estrogens.
Wow.
So they're sweating them out at an accelerated rate. So yeah, number one, you have to avoid them because what's the point of sweating them out if you keep pumping them back
Pumping it
into your
back in,
system?
yeah. Or like
But number
exercising
two,
while you're exercising, drinking out of the shitty plastic water bottle that sat in your car and got baked.
exactly. Yeah, or drinking Diet Coke or something while you're exercising or regular Coke or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, you just basically you're spinning your wheels if you keep pumping them in your system, but it does help to do some of these things like using the sauna, exercising, eating healthy. Sounds kind of trivial and basic, but it totally works. Same with sleep, right? Like you're
Well,
regenerating
I
with.
got to stop you because I think we should just roll into topic 2 because now we're getting more toward how to combat this, correct?
Oh yeah,
All right. So let's go officially now. Topic 2. We talked about the EDCs. Now we're going to get more into how to combat the EDCs and these environmental estrogens. We'll focus on lifestyle changes, elimination of certain products, and we'll talk about the water and food supply. So take it away.
good. Yeah, perfect. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different strategies for avoiding artificial estrogens, and of course, I have them outlined in my book. What I do in the book actually is I lay out 3 different plans. I say, okay, here's the bronze plan. Like, yeah, you go to college, you don't have any money, you can't afford to get all these really high end personal care products or whatever. Well, let's get the big ones out of your life, right? Like
Yes.
at least filter your drinking water, things like that, like some of the
It's the
basics.
first, yeah, it's the first. That's the first place
First
where I
place.
started. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that. And then, of course, I move up to a silver level plan and then a gold level plan. Like, say you're a pro athlete, you're a bodybuilder, you got breast cancer in your family or a high risk of breast cancer with some genetic issues, things like that. Like, yeah, you want to get more extreme. Like, certainly avoiding soy, avoiding flax,
Well,
avoiding
that's the thing.
lavender essential.
Flax gets. I knew soy. The term soy boy. All that stuff. I knew soy was like no, that's a no go. Flax. I personally never really liked flax, but flax in like the health industry is like this holy grail food. Sometimes it's like, oh, I have my flax. And then when I read your book, and I'm like, and I read that line where it actually flax has a higher estrogen payload than soy, and I was like, holy shit.
I know.
Holy shit. Like it didn't really
Yeah.
affect me because I didn't eat it, but I know plenty of people, who, besides not having their macros balanced and they're probably having weight, they're the same people who had, oh, I had a yogurt, a banana, and my flax in the morning. I'm like, okay, where's dead animal? Where's protein? Like, I know you're picking up bits and pieces, but you just named basically 3 carbs. Okay.
Right.
And now
Right.
on top of that, you learn that, okay, the payload of flax is enormous. When I read that, I was like, oh shit. Oh man. Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, just to give people relative numbers, right? Like they did a Canadian study where they tested loads of different plant items for estrogen specifically, and all of them were under 1,000 units of estrogen except soy and flax. So everything's under 1,000. Soy and flax were both over 100,000 units of estrogen. It's like a night and day difference. It's not even close in terms of how much more estrogen. And nobody disagrees. Like people argue about soy and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, if you ask a scientist whether it acts like estrogen or not, they all agree that it does.
Yeah. So
Same with
I don't
flax.
understand I don't understand the argument here. It's like, I don't get that.
Well, there's a lot of research trying to muddy the waters because there's so much money involved in soy.
Because it's cheap. It's cheap shit, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they've already put so many billions of dollars into making it GMO and to getting all the pesticides all dialed in for it and all this
So
kind
it's
of
like
thing.
they
They don't want to give it up.
they promote the soy, they promote that type of stuff with this high estrogen payload, but then things like meat, eggs, and stuff like that. It's like this stuff can kill you.
Right. Yeah, they do
Be
studies on like
be
processed like
be,
bologna and salami, and
be
then they tell you
careful.
meat is bad.
Yeah, meat. Oh, it's horrible. Watch out. You know, that stuff. Now, just because we talked about the soy and the flax, all right. I had this specific question. You know, what if a woman through blood work is shown to have low estrogen, total estradiol, everything? Okay, they're low. would this person benefit from soy and flax, or is that payload just totally different and they need something that's bioidentical?
Usually they need bioidentical. It depends if they're postmenopause or not. Postmenopause, I'm a big fan of bioidentical hormones, progesterone, testosterone,
Me
and
too.
estrogen,
Me
depending on
too.
what
Yep.
they need. The problem with soy and flax, it's a complicated discussion. Basically, when you have testosterone, there's one receptor that picks it up. It's called the androgen receptor. So pretty simple. When you have estrogen, there's actually three different estrogens. Naturally, there's estrone, there's estriol, estradiol. But not only is there three estrogens, making it more complicated, there's two estrogen receptors that pick it up. One's called estrogen receptor alpha, and one's called estrogen receptor beta. And they act really different. Like if you have too much alpha activation, too much estrogen receptor alpha, like you're flipping on the alpha light switch, that with estrogen, that increases your risk of breast cancer, increases prostate cancer in men, problems, increases depression. And of course, all these fake estrogens do that, the ones we've been
Gotcha.
talking about. Uh, Beta receptor, the estrogen receptor beta, is actually beneficial for you. It protects against Alzheimer's. It protects your heart against heart disease. It's actually very protective. The problem with soy and flax is they activate both of those receptors. So you're kind of messing around, and
Ah,
some people respond differently. It's kind of iffy. It's questionable. I'm not a big fan of doing it that way. I think, use the
bioidentical.
natural. Exactly.
Because that's the thing. Also, too, estrogen has gotten this bad rap, especially in like bodybuilding communities, because like, oh, you got to suppress the estrogen, tank the estrogen, it's bad for you. Meanwhile, it's like, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Estrogen, I mean, well, E2, the estradiol, that provides cardiac protection, right? Like
Oh yeah, yeah,
that helps with, again, also sex drive. You need a little bit of it to enable to burn fat, right? Like
yeah,
you don't want to tank that, and that also works for cognition.
yeah. Exactly,
Okay, all right.
exactly.
So
It's natural. The natural stuff is great for you. Now,
okay,
yeah, if it's way off, like here's the problem, right? Some people have super low testosterone and super high estrogen. Well, yeah,
ah,
that's a problem. It's a ratio. The ratio matters. You want high testosterone and high estrogen. Like if your estrogen's 80, rock on, and your testosterone's 1,000, rock on. But if your
exactly.
estrogen's 80 and your testosterone's 250, that's a huge problem.
Or there's the people who who mess or the people who do the TRT stuff like that, or they do take enhancement anabolic steroids where they're pushing the T levels 10 1,000 1,500 2,000, and then they try to thread the needle because of that one little article where they're like, oh, we're gonna get the E2 down to 30. It's like, you have fun.
Yeah, and then they feel like shit.
Mm-hmm. And then their joints start to ache, and then they deal with all these problems. Yep, have fun, have
Exactly.
fun. So okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
so in that case, it's probably flip of a coin. You're rolling dice if estrogen's low, and it's like, hey, let's throw in soy and flax because you may not get a good desired effect.
Correct. Yeah, don't do that. Use apigenin or something. If you really want to go that plant route, there's a supplement called apigenin, Apigenin. That's a pretty good supplement as far as that goes. If you're trying to increase your estrogen and you don't want to deal with the doctors and get prescriptions, that one's very good for beta receptor activation. But that's pretty specific, if you've got a big prostate cancer risk again or whatever.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. We talked about the hormone birth control. Now, do you see a difference between the pill based and things like the copper non-hormone emitting IUDs?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I haven't studied the IUDs that much, but I definitely am a huge opponent. Like I'm very opposed to the fake estrogen birth controls.
The pills,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
even they have IUDs that emit hormones, correct?
Oh yeah, they both. Yeah,
Okay,
some of them are
okay,
progesterone, some of them are not. Some of them are estrogen. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a major expert in that because I'm mostly focused on testosterone. Number one, when I was doing research, and then number two, the fake estrogens. Ironically, too, I got to tell you a quick story, right? Um, when I was doing testosterone research at Boston University Med School, Um, when you buy testosterone and you use the tiniest amount, you have to get all this red tape. There's all this red tape. Like you have to get signatures, multiple signatures. You have to put it in the lock box. Every time you open the key, you got to get signatures. Every time you use a little tiny bit, you weigh it on a scale, you get signatures. It's ridiculous. So difficult to study this stuff. There was a scientist literally like two doors down the hall, Ph.D. scientist. He murdered his wife with cyanide, and his wife was a medical doctor and he's in prison now. but he had literally bought a kilogram of cyanide to his lab. Nobody cared. Nobody noticed. He put a bunch in her protein shake when she went to the gym and she
Oh,
had a heart attack and
Jesus.
died. And they almost got away with it. He tried to get her rush cremated, and one of the nurses noticed the blood was a little weird red color, and they tested for cyanide. She's loaded with it. Then they went back and found it's in his lab. He had ordered some, but nobody cared, right? It's so crazy that we care more about our testosterone
Which I
in
don't,
America.
yeah, which I don't understand that.
It's just pure politics. Yeah, it's all silliness. That's because basically politicians have gotten involved and they think, the doctors think it's toxic to have your testosterone at respectable levels.
And the stuff that you want to promote all the time is not toxic.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? But I'm just saying, like, the way that they handle testosterone in this country is as if it's a problem and not like an extremely important sex hormone.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't surprise anybody that when they've got studies on fake estrogens and how they drop testosterone and all this, it just kind of gets ignored because the doctors don't pick it up as that important.
Lower the testosterone in males and females, and you have a nice docile population.
Exactly. That's probably a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay. The so we talked also about, you talked about the bronze, silver, gold plan, because again, not everyone is going to be, and I want people to get the book and I want people to look at your website, but not everyone is going to be hardcore out of the gates. I wasn't. I focused mostly first on the water. Okay, filtering the water, because all the shit that you find in the water. And then on top of that, I started to get really scared when I started reading your book about the soaps, deodorant, shampoos, the sunscreens. That's where I was like, holy shit. Like, there was the aha moment, because I'm like, holy shit. People take their babies, these little children that are developing, they smear all this shit on them and they put them in the sun, and the sun literally bakes this stuff into their receptors. When I had that moment, I was like, holy crap. And then I started seeing the studies about the sunscreen, the chemicals make it through, and then boom, are stuck on the site. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. That's why right away, like when we went on our honeymoon, and it's everywhere we go now, we have the sunscreens that are on your site. We made sure we made sure we got those. But that type of stuff, all the everyday stuff, it's like, I'm guessing it's in makeups too, right? Like,
Oh yeah. 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 It's insanity, right? I mean, and people wonder why their hormones are all screwed up, right? Um, and it's frustrating because again, like nobody was talking about, like it's crazy as a scientist because yeah, there's scientists out there that just study BPA and they tell you, oh my gosh, BPA is terrible, and they go around the country telling everybody BPA is terrible. There's other scientists that just study phthalates, which are another plastic chemical in BPA-free plastic, and they go around the country telling everybody phthalates are terrible. It's unbelievable. And then there's other scientists that study just lavender essential oil, and they do the same thing. Surprisingly enough, be careful for lavender. Another one is oxybenzone, like we're mentioning, the sunscreen chemical. On and on and on. You go down the list and you find these scientists. It's like, wait, why is nobody putting this all together?
yes,
Because
why
they're
is there not this
all
clan of scientists that are like doing something? Because this is and what triggered me big with again, soaps, deodorants, shampoos, sunscreens is, the skin is the biggest port of entry that there is.
yeah,
Like, you're in the shower, it's hot, pores are open. You're in the sun, you're baking, your pores are open. Your pores open, you're rubbing that shit in your hair, you're rubbing that shit in your deodorant, in your armpits. And I'm like, I got paranoid at first, and then I learned to just get different products. And it was, but I'm like, like, oh my god, like this shit is like everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. Plastics, I'm looking around and I'm like, there's plastics everywhere. It's when you get that red pill and you start to come to realize like what's going on, it's a lot to take in at first.
right. And people need that. I mean, it's like bacteria, right? Like back in the day, people didn't know bacteria existed. They were doing surgery with their bare hands, and they were coughing all over the wound site when they're cutting people open and all kinds of crazy stuff. Once you realize, like, yeah, there's bacteria in the air, and you got to have a sterile environment when you're doing surgery. You're going to get a big infection and that kind of thing. It's eye opening, but it's also super effective. Like, it works, it helps people. Same with this stuff. Like, yeah, it's kind of scary, like you look around, this shit is everywhere, but it sure helps to get rid of it. You want to have that power, that knowledge, so you can have power over this topic, because otherwise you're just walking around in this stuff, these estrogen chemicals.
So takeaway in terms of getting people started who are gonna start this process would be, would you agree, start with water and
Yep.
what you're drinking out of, and you
Yep.
need to start looking at the soaps, deodorants, and stuff like that. Now, you had something in the book, I forgot what it was, like when they look at their ingredients for soaps, deodorant, shampoo, sunscreens, what are we looking out for? And keep in mind also too, we're going to link to your site where you have all Jay's products, which was very, very useful. It helped me and my wife out a lot. But run of the mill, you're at the supermarket, it's like, oh, I'm going to get that. What are you looking for?
Yeah. Yeah. Generally, if they use the word fragrance on the label and they don't tell you what the ingredients are, that's a red flag right off the bat, because most of the time they're using cheap petroleum products as fragrances, which all act like, well, not all of them, but a lot of them act like estrogen. Um, and so that's a real common problem. If you don't know the ingredients and you don't trust the company necessarily, if you don't know the company, if it's a small company and they're very diligent about, avoiding all these fake estrogens, and they're
Yeah. No,
using the
oh,
word
sorry,
fragrance.
not to interrupt you, but another thing, the laundry detergents and the fabric
Yeah,
softener. I'm like, holy shit, it's on my clothes.
everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's on my fucking clothes. Like, I
Yeah,
had to make these changes.
yeah, yeah, man. When I go to my in-laws' place, for example, they still have a lot of scented detergent, laundry detergent, and we'll every once in a while we still have to do our laundry if we stay there for a few days. And I've got a bunch of kids and stuff, so we get dirty clothes. That smell stays on them for like multiple cycles. Because I personally use fragrance-free laundry detergent,
Me too. Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah.
and you get that fragrancy laundry, and you wash it. I bring it back home, and then I put it in my laundry detergent, and then it still smells like freaking fragrance. And then you do like a couple cycles, and it gets a little bit dimmer and dimmer, but man, it takes a lot to get that fragrance crap out of those clothes. And they've done studies. You think like, well, he's just being paranoid. They've done dermal uptake studies, it's skin uptake, to measure like, well, what happens if you've got these fragrancy laundry detergents? Do those fragrance chemicals, do those estrogen chemicals go into the actual bloodstream? They absolutely do.
Yeah,
In fact,
especially if you're working out, you're sweating again, pores open.
yeah,
Biggest port of entry is the skin.
yeah, exactly. Well, and speaking of that, after I published my book, they came out with a study with sunscreen. They did one application of sunscreen and tested people's blood. 7 days later, their levels were still above the government's own safety limit for oxybenzone, this estrogen chemical. 7 days later, one application of sunscreen.
And now take that, and it's bad enough that you're putting that on fully grown, fully developed human beings.
Yep.
Then you start to talk about little children developing these small systems, low body weight, and it's just like all over them, and then they sit in the sun and bake.
Exactly.
And now stuff
Yep.
like that. Now could issues like that early on in development reap its ugly face later on?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Can you the people who do get low testosterone or stuff like that and do need therapy, could that have been from a lot of old exposure where people we didn't necessarily know, our parents didn't know?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. It's called epigenetics, right? I mean, you're changing the marks on top of your DNA, and they've done studies like they've looked at that, right? Like I've looked at that at Mayo Clinic. I mean, you definitely are changing your epigenetics all the time. And these sex hormones, the unique thing about sex hormones, they don't just stick to the outside of cells. Like imagine a big soccer ball or a big ball or something like a cell. Most most things like most peptides and hormones and things, they just stick to the outside of the cell, and then that transmits a signal to the inside of the cell. But they're not actually going into the cell. Sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, they actually go into the cell. So they're actually
Wow.
inside the cell causing changes. But not only that, it gets even crazier, because your DNA has its own cell membrane. It's called a nuclear membrane. It's almost like having a cell inside of a cell with your DNA to protect your DNA from shenanigans. Well, these fake estrogens go into the DNA. Like testosterone, estrogen, the natural sex hormones, they actually go into the nuclear membrane and alter your DNA directly. And these fake estrogens do the same thing. They mess up your epigenetics, and that's why the changes are so long term.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like scratching a CD. It's hard to unscratch those, you know.
Wow. So the main thing is people need to be more aware of that for themselves, but also, if they have children, like that's gotta be rough,
Big priority.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's gotta be, because that's a developing system, like
Yeah.
that's the shampoo, like it's everywhere, if you're unaware and you're putting the sunscreen, the shampoos, and they're eating this and drinking this, it's this. Oh man, I just feel like this needs more attention. This is it's not, I'm not sitting here, my hair on fire. The evidence is there between the sperm counts dropping, testosterone levels plummeting. You see it, in society as a whole, where it does seem like things have gone a little more soft. I look around and I'm like, I don't identify with anyone around me. Great.
Right. Right.
It's a little rough sometimes. Nothing against, listen, not everyone's gonna be macho guy, alpha, whatever, fine. But it's very different. As the decades have gone on, I'm looking around and I'm like, wait, what happened? What did I miss the memo? Something is very off right now. And it just seems, you know, again, I don't know if this is not related. People don't know how to change their tires. No one does anything anymore. They're scared to get dirty. They're scared to get their hands, scared to work. It seems like across the board, hard work, that grit, like, is that, I feel like all this stuff in the end term is related. And again, you start to look at what makes people, male and female, take the risk, put their shoulder to the wheel and get things done. Good hormones,
Yep.
good
Oh yeah.
balance, good balance of hormones, testosterone and estrogen. Um, even thyroid. I feel like so many people, myself included, thyroid, which again, I want to get into the importance of the DNA analysis from you. I kept getting, okay numbers on the free T3, but I still felt very sluggish. Things weren't right. And I remember we did the analysis and you told me that I'm probably susceptible to, because again, when you get that blood work, that's not in the cell. There's no guarantee what's getting in that cell. You told me that I may have an issue with getting T3 into the cell. And, I'm looking at my numbers that seemed good. They're not at the low, but they're not high. I decided then to start taking Armor,
Hmm.
and I pushed my free T3 higher.
Yep.
And now it's like night and day,
Yep.
night
Yep.
and day. So, again, things like that, are big. It's not just the sex hormones. It's definitely thyroid as well. And the EDCs can affect thyroid.
Oh yeah, for sure. People have even given entire talks on that separately and things. I'm not as much of an expert, but plenty of people have plenty of thyroid issues. It's shocking
There's
how
so
pop-.
many. And some people don't even know it. They just feel
Well,
like, with me, they're
yeah.
dieting for a show. And it's just like, oh, I'm just feeling tired. We get blood work done. It's like, this thyroid's bad. Then they go into off season. Oh, more food. It should go higher. No, it's always probably been low.
Yeah, and as we age, it gets lower too. And most people don't realize, like, yeah, by the time you're 80, everybody should probably be on some thyroid replacement optimization because who wants low energy? It's so stupid.
Yeah. Why? Yeah.
I, yeah, I go hunting with people that are like 80 years old that optimize their hormones, and they're hard to keep up with in Montana in the mountains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you go to the nursing home and you see these 80-year-old guys that are like too tired to lift their hand to wave high, and it's so silly. It's like, who would you rather be? I mean, their thyroid is in the toilet, and the doctors come by and look at their blood test, and they say, "Oh, look at that, it looks normal."
Normal.
Because everybody's thyroid declines with age, so they think it's normal.
Yep.
They think
And on top of that, they don't even test all. That's another pet peeve of mine. Did they test your thyroid? Yes. Let me see. Then
just
what?
TSH.
Just TSH. I'm like, son of a bitch. Or it's a TSH. Or if you get someone who's risky, you get TSH and free T4. I'm like, where's the free T3? I'd like
Yeah,
to see reverse T3 sometimes as well. Like, you got to see the whole picture. It's like, oh, my TSH is fine. They said I'm good. It's like, great, cool. You keep
yeah. Well, it's
you
well.
keep feeling shitty then.
Exactly. Well, here's a good example of why that's problematic. So, like, if your TSH is really high, that usually means your thyroid hormones are really high because it's telling your body to make lots of thyroid hormones. But Sometimes you can have really high TSH because your body's not making any thyroid
Yes.
hormones, so your body's trying desperately to make more thyroid hormones. So you have like zero thyroid hormones and your TSH is high. So
Yep.
doctors looking at that saying, "Oh, look at that, your thyroid hormones look great." Well, they're just looking at TSH. It could mean two totally opposite things.
That's yep.
So you
Mm-hmm.
can't just have that one picture. And by the way, they're not even checking thyroid hormones in a lot of people. Period. They're just checking cholesterol and just complaining about that, which is the most absurd thing to be complaining about because everybody's blood sugar is sky high and their thyroid's down low and their testosterone's super low. And
Oh, if you're 2 or 3 clicks over
cholesterol.
200 on
Yeah,
cholesterol, we're going to put you on a statin to push you down to 140, 150, which shows that you probably have a higher chance of mortality at that low rate. But we'll do it anyway.
exactly.
Drive
Probably
me
gonna have zero energy.
drive
Yeah,
me crazy. Um, all
yeah.
right. I feel like we did really well here. I want to make sure that again, I want to stress the importance of buying the book. And I'm going to put a graphic because again, I'm not a book cover guy. So I mean I have it right here, but it doesn't look too pretty. Just the gray. I took the cover off. So I'll put a
I got the
nice
hardcover. Yeah,
yeah. I'll put a nice display and link for that. But also too, I want to stress the importance of the DNA analysis. That is something that I paid for with you, and it was very beneficial. It helped guide. Even I was very good with my supplements, but this helped guide me even more, and it helped me then take the leap to pull the trigger on the Armor Thyroid, on the thyroid medication, which I feel like was the biggest one of the biggest improvements I've had in my life in a long time. They say the best feel good hormones are what? Testosterone and thyroid. That thyroid really helped out. So we want to make sure we plug that and just give a brief cliff notes of what that entails. People need to have what I forgot what I even had. I had 23 and
yeah,
me.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. 23andMe is great. It's very thorough. They test all your Alzheimer's risk genes and things like that. Yeah, and then you come over to AJ Consulting Company, which is my website. Terrible website name, I know, but it's just what I had for the last 12
Hey,
years.
it gets the job done. The website gets the job done.
You have to spell out ajconsultingcompany.com. It's terrible. But again, you just go there and I'm running a sale, at least for the time being. And yeah, and then you do a consult directly. I just talk to you on the phone about your DNA or
And
on.
you run their raw data
Exactly.
through
I have my
you.
own software.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, there we go. I'm a software guy. So here we go. Let's talk about that. So you take the raw data, you run it through your software, and you can really break this down, granularly as opposed to just the flashy bells and whistles that 23andMe or someone else says. You really dive into this.
exactly. And I'm not afraid to dive into it. 23andMe, they'll tell you what your eye color is and things like that. You pay an extra $100 for their health reports, but you don't even need like you get the cheapest kit you can. That's what I recommend to people because that gives you the raw data file. And that's all I need. But if you pay an extra $100 for the 23andMe's health reports, they'll tell you like, oh, you've got green eyes.
Cool.
It's like, yeah, I already kind of know I have green eyes. I don't really
Outstanding.
care. So there's things like that. And again, I don't care. I'm not going to put what your eye color is on your DNA report because I couldn't care less about that. But I do
Yeah.
want to find out, like, yeah, what muscle fiber type do you have? Well, do you have thyroid risks? Do you have vitamin D risks? How does your body handle vitamins, estrogen, testosterone? Right? Like, how does your heart disease risk stack up? What about your Alzheimer's risk? What about your depression risk? Your lifespan extension genes? Your sleep genes? I mean, there's a lot of categories. It's very exhaustive and
That was
uh,
very it was very,
thorough.
very useful though, the way you went about the process. So
Yeah,
my audience knows I don't pitch shit. Anything that I pitch or go with, like I have done myself and fully believe in. And I have the book. I've read the book. I have notes. I have highlights all over the place. And I did the DNA thing with you. And I think that other people should, if they have their 23andMe stuff, to bring it to you and pay for the consult is money worth spending. You live once, you have one body, you should invest in yourself. You could buy new shoes, you could buy a new car, you could buy a new house, you can't buy a new body. It's worth the money. Take care of that. Check out the book.
thanks, man.
Good.
I appreciate it. Couldn't said it better myself. It's a good ending.
We did good, brother. We did good.
Thanks.
I appreciate having you on and keep fighting the good fight, man. There's people out there like me who are rooting for you every day.
Oh, thanks a lot. You keep up the good work yourself.
Thank you.